The family that vacations together stays together. At least that was the plan. Except now the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want your connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome to Ballot Battleground Nevada. I'm your host, Ben Margiott, a reporter at KRNV News 4 in Reno. I'm passionate about making politics in this critical battleground state more digestible to the average voter and pushing past the talking points to press politicians for answers. On this show, we take deep dives into the people, ideas, and debates shaping Silver State politics. Vote, vote, vote. If you take one thing from the episode this week, get out and do your civic duty. Cast your ballot in the primary election in Nevada. If you're unsure how to do that or why, we have a jam-packed primary episode for you today. We'll go out to early voting, hear from voters, get an update on turnout, hear from the Washoe County registrar about how things are going, and from one nonpartisan group working tirelessly to protect the vote in the Silver State. Before we get to all that, though, one last friendly reminder. If you opened up your mail ballot and didn't know who was on it, we have the perfect resource for you. My station, News 4 Fox 11, interviewed 65 candidates for local office, more candidates than we've ever interviewed for an election, and we've been running these interviews every night on the news for the past 3 weeks or so. It's called Know Your Candidates 2024. We've done previews of 17 different races from U.S. Senate all the way down to Reno and Sparks City Council. They are all online, full interviews with all of these candidates. Check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. All right, it is all things primary on this week's Ballot Battleground Nevada, so let's dive right in by heading out to the polls. It's Wednesday morning at the Reno Town Mall. 5 election workers are standing by ready for a throng of voters. In reality, it is a slow trickle of people. One worker told me they've had a lot of downtime to catch up on reading. As of Wednesday morning, across 24 polling places and 10 days of early voting, just 6,500 people had voted in person in Washoe County. We caught up with a few of them.
I just like to come in person and cast my ballot. Since I retired, I do the early voting. When I used to work, I used to actually go in and actually vote because I live right across from Bartley Ranch. So my biggest concern is the climate and our environment. It's always been my big concern. And in fact, I just bought an electric vehicle so I could contribute to trying to change that.
I come out and vote every election.
How come? Why is it important?
I think it's my duty as a citizen to vote, and you can't complain if you don't. I'm a senior. I've been voting this way for 50, 60 years, and I'm in a habit of doing it. So basically the economy and the justice system.
Are you worried about, you don't think the economy is doing very well right now, or?
I think the economy is too bloody expensive.
Well, it's important to vote. We've got to make our voice known, especially mine. Of course, the economy is important to me, and the schools in general.
How do you feel about the economy?
Well, we're having some issues. I'm personally fortunate that I don't have too many issues, but I know there are other people that are suffering in the housing market.
It is slow in person because the overwhelming majority of people are voting by mail so far. Over 75% of people who have voted in Nevada up to this point have done so by mail. Turnout across Nevada as of Wednesday morning sits at just 8.5%. While it's been slow so far, our next guest thinks there will be a decent turnout when it's all said and done. She's the woman running the election in our critical swing county, the Washoe County Registrar of Voters, Cari-Ann Burgess. We talked about when and how to vote, why it's so important, her reaction to the slow turnout so far, and we also pressed her about the various different ballot errors that have happened and her message to voters whose faith in the system has been affected as a result. And I'm so pleased to be joined now by the Registrar of Voters in Washoe County, Cari-Ann Burgess, a returning guest. Welcome back. Glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How are you functioning right now? Because we just heard that you probably got about 4 hours of sleep last night as we're in the middle of all this primary chaos. How you holding up?
Great.
Yeah?
Caffeine.
Honestly?
Caffeine is my best friend at the moment. Yeah, good. No, it's good. We not only are processing ballots, but we're also processing petitions that have been coming in. So those are going to be on the ballot this fall. So we've got multiple things going on in the office.
Yeah, you've got, we talked about it last week on News 4, nonpartisan candidates, Green Party candidates. Great timing for them to have to submit all their signatures right in the middle of primary season.
Yes, it is.
How are things going? I mean, have you been out to some of the voting centers? We are in week 2 now of early voting. It ends Friday, of course. From your perspective, kind of running the ship as the registrar, how are things going so far?
Actually pretty smooth. Pretty smooth at the vote centers. We've had a few hiccups with a few machines, but we have been able to get those back online or replace them. That's been really good. But no, we've been doing pretty well. I've been out to a couple of the vote centers, and then on election day, I'll be hitting a lot more. I plan on hitting quite a few on election day. It's just been a whirlwind of a couple of weeks, and we're 1 week out from the election, so I'm pretty excited. I've kind of got an E- calendar going in my office.
Give us an idea of like an average day for you during the early voting period. I mean, it's 15-hour days, running around, putting out fires at different voting sites. What's your average day look like?
My average day usually starts at about 6 a.m. When I get to the office between 6 and 6:30. I try to catch up on the rest of my emails, correspondence, of course. Then staff coming in and asking me questions from vote centers, but also processing our mail ballots. How do we do this? It consists of meetings with the Secretary of State's office, with other organizations that we work with. And I usually end the day probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, sometimes later.
Jeez.
But right now we have a new deputy, so sometimes I can get out the door a little bit early. But that usually means I'm on my computer at home for a couple more hours to finish off the day, just to make sure everything is done good and all of the reports are done before I go to bed at night.
All that to say, we're so appreciative that you made time to come in and chat with us here on Battleground Nevada, because there are certainly far more important things that you'll be doing all day and all night after you finish taping with us.
Well, no, this is just as important. To me, this is just as important because it's getting the word out. And it's getting, highlighting what we do.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Well, and that is a great segue, because part of the mission of this podcast and what we do at News 4, my TV station, is to tell people how to participate in our democracy, especially this time of year when we're a week out from an election. So let's just go real basic here. Tell us all the different ways that people can vote in this election, because Nevada's added a couple different ways in recent years for someone maybe who's just turned 18, which is really exciting for them, or just moved to Nevada or unfamiliar with the process. Just real basic. Take us through all the different ways that people can vote here up until June 11th.
So if you're new to Nevada, you can actually go Secretary of State's website. You can register that way. It is a provisional, so then you can go in the vote center and vote. You have to bring all of your identification. But you can go to the vote center. You can do it through mail ballot. If you didn't get your mail ballot, you can always call us and we can do a counter ballot. If you're new to the area, you can just go right into a vote center and bring all of your identification and do it that way. You can just drop off your ballot at a drop box. We have 24 early voting sites right now, and then on election day we'll have 49. And one of those is only a drop box. So,
Yeah. All those early voting locations, with a couple exceptions, open 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. through Friday, June 7th. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Most of them are 10 to 6.
And you can drop off your ballot only when it's open, or 24/7 at those locations?
Only when it's open. We do have somebody manning the ballot box. So we want to make sure that nothing else gets in there but ballots.
And then on election day, they open at 7 a.m. So it's full 7 to 7, 12 hours, right?
Absolutely. 7 to 7 on election day.
Okay. And just to reiterate, for the new voters, you do need your ID and some proof of who you are, but registered voters, of course, don't need to bring anything.
Nope. We can actually just look them up in the computer.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
And what about folks that do want to bring in their mail ballot to be disposed of, say they are going to vote in person early or on election day? What's the best way to kind of dispose of your mail ballot if you want to safely get rid of it?
Actually bring it into a vote center. What we'll do is we put, the voter will actually open the envelope, because once it's opened, we do not do anything with it. It goes into a canceled envelope, sealed, and then brought back to our office. Those are put in a box and never seen again until we can get rid of them in 22 months.
Yeah. Let's fast forward a little bit to election night, a day and a night that we're all looking forward to, especially you. What's that going to look like? There's a little bit of a change from previous cycles, which we've reported on News 4, where the Secretary of State's office might be able to report some results a little bit sooner. Explain how that works.
Us counties can actually send our results by 6 p.m. on election night. But again, the Secretary of State's office will not be releasing anything until all the polls are closed and everyone has voted on election night. So it has changed just a little bit. As far as election day goes, we'll start at 5 a.m. in the office. Everybody will be in at 5, and then we'll go until basically the last person drops at probably 12, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, regroup, and then come back probably about 6 or 7 the next day to finish processing the ballots.
Wow. When are you guys able, remind us, I've asked you this before, but to begin processing, not counting, but processing mail ballots that are coming in every single day right now during the early voting period?
We're actually been able to do that. So we started on Monday scanning the ballots. So that means they come in either through vote centers or the U.S. Postal Service. We put them through our ballot sorter. They get sorted that way. They go to signature verification, go back to the sorter, and then that goes to a couple more steps, but through extraction. And extraction then goes to scanning. And then scanning is that is the last process until tabulation on election night.
Gotcha. Okay. A lot going on behind the scenes for you guys and all the staff working very long hours during this whole period. It's not just election day, it's the multiple months leading up to it. So, which is why it's kind of a bummer for me personally when you see the turnout, and I bet it kind of bums you out a little bit too, because it's been slower than we would like. You know, we want 100% turnout. We want everyone to vote,
Yes.
and that's not realistic. From your perspective, has it been slow? Does it kind of hurt your heart a little bit seeing that it has been slow just so far?
It hasn't hurt. Ask me that on election night if the numbers
Right.
are still that way.
Yeah.
I actually expect the majority of it to come in on election day.
Okay.
And so does our staff. I wholeheartedly expect to get between 20 and 30,000 ballots on election day alone, because that's what people want to do. They want to go and cast their ballot that day, not only in person, but even just handing over their ballot. They want to do that on election day. Completely understand. And I know a lot of people do not want to use the Postal Service because our envelopes changed a little bit with the guidelines of the Secretary of State's office. So, a lot of people just want to go drop it off. And I absolutely encourage that. Go drop it off, go vote in person, whatever you want to do. But just come and vote. Be part of the democracy, be part of part of the shaping of our country.
Yeah, you can definitely eliminate one step if you are worried about the Postal Service and just physically drop it off. The deadline, I mean, if you drop it off when the polls are open, of course it's counted. But if you're going to put it in the mail through the USPS service, it has to be postmarked by election day, right?
Yes.
Okay. Glad to verify that.
Why wait until Cyber Monday in December to save money on custom window treatments? Save now at Blinds.com's Cyber Summer Sale. Blinds.com invented the better way to shop for premium window coverings, 100% online. Even when you buy multiple window treatments, Blinds.com can handle the measuring and installation for you at one low cost with no hidden fees. Shop the Blinds.com Cyber Summer Sale now and save up to 40% site-wide, plus premium doorbusters. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the issues that have cropped up when it comes to the ballots that people were and are getting in their mailbox. We've chatted with you about this a little bit prior. There was one race where it was a precinct issue south of Rancho San Rafael, and so a couple Nevada legislative races were missing from those ballots altogether. What's the latest on that? Because you guys were planning to reprint and resend the correct ballots, right?
So what had happened is that when we re-precincted part of Reno last year, we only had 6 weeks to do it, and it usually takes about 6 months to re-precinct a district wholly.
Which means redrawing the
Yes,
lines.
redrawing lines and everything else. And when we did that, we actually reused precinct numbers, which is not something that we typically do either. You usually create new numbers, but when we did that, we actually used old numbers, and when that happened, the old races were actually put into the new spot.
Gotcha.
So because of that, we looked around it, and we actually found another precinct that would have the exact same ballot. So we sent them all the correct ballot. Because we found that issue, I worked with 3 other departments to make sure that everybody is precincted correctly. And those that were not, I looked at every single record. I didn't pass it off to my staff. I looked at every single record to make sure that they were done and we were done correctly. And we sent them all new ballots. Now, there's some people that we couldn't change because of their voting status, inactives, fatal pens, canceled, and we can't do any of those until after the election. So after the election, we'll be able to go in and, just make sure that those are removed from our voter rolls because they can't vote. But yeah, we fixed it. The sample ballot, yeah, we had a race left off of that one, and but that was only on the sample ballot. They were actually on the ballot.
And that's for our listeners. That was Assembly District 40, right? The Republican primary, PK O'Neill and Drew Rebar. That race was not on the sample ballots.
No, that was my mistake. When I was creating the sample ballot and those races, when I was putting them all together, I missed those. So unfortunately, when you have about 15 things going on at the same time, because at the same time we were also working on proofing our ballots, our sample ballots, the proofing of all of it happens about the same time, and it goes to 2 different vendors. So getting everything together, we had like 3 different departments looking at it, and I was the final one, and I completely missed it.
Of the 3 issues, the third one being the people that said they were opting out of getting a mail ballot and they got one anyway. That one, it's handled normally, right? As if they were just to get a mail ballot. There's no correction needed per se, if you will.
No.
The precincting issue, the incorrect ballots were invalidated and those are canceled, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And then the other one only affecting the sample ballots. So you guys have resolved and dealt with all of these issues, but what do you say to the voter who sees these issues crop up and maybe their faith in the system has already been chipped away at, if you will, and they see these pop up and maybe it contributes to their lack of trust in the system?
I would say that we're human. We're doing the absolute best that we can. We have now put in place different processes and procedures where we didn't have before. We didn't have processes and procedures of how to do these things. Now that I'm in this seat, we absolutely do. It's not one person looking at everything anymore. It's now multiple people looking at it, and we all have a master sheet, where before we didn't either. We have put in place different things, but I'm going to tell you that going forward with the new VREM system that is coming online at the end of July, it will actually take care of a lot of these things. So when we actually build a mailing list to go out to the voters, we put everybody in it, and then from there we actually have to back people out, and it's literally about 15 steps in order to do that. And if you miss one, people get ballots that they don't want.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So the new VREM system will actually take care of that. It will actually help with the sample ballots, making sure that everybody's on it when it needs to be, all of that kind of fun stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. And for our listeners, we've talked about it a couple times on the show, but if you're new, that's the top-down voter registration system where essentially the Secretary of State, as opposed to the individual counties, will maintain kind of the massive voter registration list for the entire state. So
yes,
that will be going online this summer, just as soon as we're wrapped up with the June primary. Let's finish with this. What do you say to a voter who's like, my vote doesn't matter, or it's not worth my time, or I don't really feel like participating in this June primary?
Remember what our forefathers have fought for. Remember who we are. We are one of the greatest nations in the world. We absolutely have our issues. We do. But we are one of the greatest countries in the world. We have an obligation to make sure that we elect our leaders who will do the best job possible to help lead our country into the next century. If we don't have participation, that's not going to work. And having that and knowing what other people have done for us, like the veterans, fighting for what they have, also what our forefathers broke away from Britain for. I mean, history is a huge part of who we are. We need to remember that so that as we look at our flag, as we look at our country, we have that pride.
Absolutely. A great message to end it on for sure. If you haven't already, if you're not planning to, get out and vote.
Please
it's
vote.
a closed primary, so that's one of the hang-ups for some people. You can either vote your nonpartisan ballot or re-register with a party, but there's so many different ways to do it. There is no excuse to get out and vote in June.
Exactly. Just please get out and vote. Your vote does count. Your voice is heard, and that is the perfect way to make it happen.
We will end it there for today. Cari-Ann, we thank you so much for coming by the studio. We appreciate it. Get some sleep, get some caffeine, keep the faith. We're almost there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least that was the plan. Except now the Dastardly Desk Clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want your connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
One of the groups working to ensure the process is fair and smooth for voters is All Voting is Local, a nonpartisan advocacy group with a chapter here in Nevada. They work to expand access to the ballot box for all, but especially marginalized communities. Their senior campaign manager in Northern Nevada came in for an interview on their efforts this cycle. Here's Jennifer Willett. And I'm thrilled now to be joined by Jennifer Willett with All Voting is Local. She's the senior campaign manager in Northern Nevada. Jennifer, first timer on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and All Voting is Local. For folks who aren't familiar, what do you guys do?
Sure. So I'm the senior campaign manager. Like you said, I work in Northern Nevada at All Voting is Local. Our organization fights to dismantle any barriers to voting to make sure that we have a democracy that works for all of us. We primarily do that through policy work and through working in partnership with communities that we work with and our election officials. So that means I do that here in Northern Nevada. I work a lot with Washoe County. I love working with young people here to make sure our first-time voters are coming out to vote. And I do things with tribes and the rurals and the clerks that they work with.
It's important work. Thank you guys for doing it. Let's start broadly before we get into the primary, which is going on now. What is the landscape in Nevada, maybe compared to other states? Are there a lot of barriers to voting here? From my perspective, it seems like there's more ways now to vote than ever before.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We live in a pro-voter state. We have several ways to vote. We can vote early. We can vote on election day. We can vote by mail. We can vote in person. But I think it's those little pockets that we haven't quite figured out that we want to make sure that everyone, no matter who they are, where they live, what their circumstances, we can figure out those little tiny barriers so everyone is able to vote.
Yeah, give me an example of one of those.
Sure, we recently passed a state law in the last session that allows for in-jail voting. So people who are pre-trial, pre-conviction, they are now able to vote when they are being held in jail, which is totally legal.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty, you still have your rights.
Exactly, yeah. And we've done things to shift laws that weren't exactly working, even though they were intended to be really good for populations. So previously, tribal nations had to apply for a polling place, and that didn't always work. Now tribal nations automatically get a polling station if they want one.
Gotcha. That's a great change for sure. So what are you guys doing now in the lead up over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
And now that we're in the middle of early voting, do you guys have people that are, poll watchers out at different locations? What are you guys doing now?
Yeah, we do a ton of things. We think our work starts early. So we want to make sure that everything is in place before someone's vote is silenced or they can't vote for a reason. So about a year ago, we traveled around the state to talk to communities and election officials to make sure they knew the new laws. Did they have any questions? Could we help them in any way? Same with Washoe County. We develop relationships there, see if we can help. We do things like recruit poll workers, which is a huge issue in any community. And now is kind of the fun time to see like all our work pay off. Our partners hold events. Like we just held an event called Slay the Vote with Progressive Leadership Alliance and One APIA Nevada that was geared towards having a welcoming event for LGBTQ members of our public, and they could vote while they're out there. And we support our partners in doing events or turnout, any sorts of things they're doing that we can help with.
Yeah. For Nevada, one of the things that makes it easy is you can register on the same day, right?
Mhm.
You can, as we've talked about, vote by mail. You can change your party affiliation, which could be important for this primary. How does that work for changing your party or voting same day? Is it provisional, or are you allowed to vote and that vote is cast right away?
You can vote. So it functions similarly to same-day registration if you want to change your party. So in that case, to not have it be provisional, bring your ID. We're not generally an ID state. We're a signature verification state. But when you want to make those changes, it's easier to have your ID so it can go right through.
In terms of the primary so far that you guys are kind of monitoring a little bit, have you seen any issues crop up? We had the registrar of voters here in Washoe County, Cari-Ann Burgess, on earlier in this episode, and she said it's been pretty smooth so far. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, with all of our events and other work that we do in the community, we're ready to do rapid response for any election administration issue. And we haven't had to do anything. Things have been very smooth. And I think that's a testament to the great work that our registrar, our rural clerks, election workers, and poll workers are doing.
Yeah. Are you bummed when you see the turnout is low so far? I mean, this is your life's work, making sure people get out and vote, and it's been pretty slow so far. Is that kind of a bummer?
Yeah, it is totally a bummer, of course. Hopefully it'll pick up, and election day, if people are waiting for the big day, is Tuesday, and hopefully we'll see some big numbers there.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who is on the fence, uninterested, uninspired, don't feel like it matters? What would you tell that person?
I get it, but in my opinion, voting is the most accessible way for most people to steer the direction of their community. And I know the presidential election is really exciting. It's on the national news. Everyone's talking about it. But these local races are putting people in positions that make decisions about your community.
Yeah.
And day-to-day things in your community, like the city council, the school board, the county commission. So they're talking about things like where our money goes, how schools are functioning, how we're working with our unhoused population. So these are things that are really going to affect you. And these local races are sometimes won by a handful of votes. So your vote really does matter. And I hope that, you'll reconsider and have a say in what your community and what you want your community to look like.
Yeah, I've always said that local government and local politicians can affect your life far more than the senator or the president can.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Certainly.
Yes.
I mean, whether or not there's a park in your neighborhood, whether or not there's a development behind your house or you have open space, whether or not X, Y, and Z is being taught in your children's school. So critical to get out and vote in these elections. Once we get through the primary, what are you guys kind of working on, monitoring, tracking for the general? There's going to be some ballot questions, one that might have to do with voter ID, as you've mentioned.
Sure. And we're a nonpartisan organization, so we really just want to make sure that everybody can vote. Of course, we are against any sort of measure that would make voting harder for people, like the ID measure. But we will be focusing on making sure that any lessons we've learned from this election can be applied to the big one. People understand that they're able to vote and know how to vote, where to vote, have all the information they need. And any barriers that have come up, we can jump on those now and fix them before the general.
What wins are you guys maybe celebrating?
We are celebrating the new tribal polling places that we have, and there are several new ones that are going to be available for folks. And we're celebrating the NGL voting initiative, which is really exciting for us.
How does that work? Physically vote? Is it only by mail? Is there a voting booth kiosk that they bring into the jail on a certain day? How does it work?
Every county is doing something a little bit different, and that's good because they should be doing things that work best for them. So some are voting like on a mail ballot, and some are being transported to vote in person if there's only maybe one polling place in their county. So they're figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
And there are always bumps in the road, but they are figuring it out and increasing access to people.
Yeah. How does it work here in Washoe County, just out of curiosity?
I think that they vote on paper in the jail.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So no excuse, even if you are incarcerated or out of the country or what
Right.
have you with mail ballots. I mean, there's really no excuse to get out and vote in this June primary.
And we also have the e-system, which allows military members, people overseas, people with disabilities, and tribal members to vote using the online system. So we're making it easy.
Absolutely. It is easier now than ever before.
Yeah.
No excuse. Vote by whatever means necessary in this election. Yeah, it's important.
Yes.
Awesome. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming into the studio. Appreciate all your hard work to make these elections free, fair, and accessible to everyone.
Cool. Thank you.
A special thanks to Cari-Ann and Jennifer for coming on the show this week. Our next show will be after the election, so make sure to follow News 4 and Fox 11 up to and on Election Day for the very latest updates. We'll have crews at watch parties, at the registrar's office, at polling places all over, covering this critical election from many different angles. And we'll be back in your podcast feed next Wednesday with a full election recap. If you made it to the end of this episode, I really appreciate it. If you have guest ideas, episode ideas, questions, comments, compliments, concerns, anything at all, feel free to shoot us an email to bjmargiott, Margiott, at sbgtv.com with Ballot Battleground Nevada in the subject line. We love to hear from our listeners, and you might get a Ballot Battleground Nevada sticker if you do send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a minute, we also appreciate it if you left a rating and a review. That helps the podcast show up higher in searches so more people can discover the show. Thanks for listening. Get out and vote, and we'll see you next week.